Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Like I said before, we are here with a guest speaker. I am here with Sandra Martin. She is from Las Vegas, Nevada, and is here to tell us a little bit about her time in school. And she is also works for the Clark County School District. Thank you, Sandra, for being here tonight. We are talking about healthcare, or health disparities, I should say, in education. And I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of insight into what your school was like your past was like for your education, but also to answer a few questions as to your um, some ideas that you might have to help or to fix these disparities that we have in our education systems. So thank you for being with us here tonight. Hi, hello. Yes, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here, and I would love to answer some few questions that you have. Go ahead. All right, awesome. Let's get down to it. So, my first question that I have for you kind of goes off of what we discussed earlier when it came to the process in education. And what we talked about, process of education is the years that students or children go through in schools, which is 13 years, but also too if they had any influences in their family's teachings and stuff like that, or if they had a community-based educational system wherever they learned information, the process that they go through that, and then the externalization part, which people, which would mean the skills that they have learned, and now they can apply it to their daily lives. So basically, the question that I have is, could there be at least one thing you can think about that could decrease a disparity in education? Well, to start off, you make a good point when it comes to talking of what we've learned and applying it, or what we've learned throughout education and then applying it to help better your life. But off the top of my head, I think that a good starting point would be to go directly towards grade school level or more like a community teaching. Maybe add more informational classes in health, preferably in high school. And I mean high school because in that way students' brains are more developed so they can understand what their instructor is teaching them and to explain and in those classes they can explain illnesses and diseases, what could cause illness and disease, we can do to prevent it, um, what are the steps that it takes to preventing it, um, what are health outcomes that could be if you change your lifestyle, stuff like that. um, and then there also has to be this thing where there's no misguided information and that students can reflect on the choices they make early on. Like I said, um, once they've taken that information and then they can apply it to themselves, the externalization process. Um, but I really think that getting this kind of information out to the students earlier in their lives, like in high school, would be more beneficial. Than that way they make their own choices as to what kind of behaviors that they have. Like many cases, a lot of students get into drugs around their high school careers and stuff like that. I remember taking back in grade school, it was like elementary school, where they had the DARE program. But since I was, 5, I can't really remember what they taught us. And, we're 5-year-olds. We don't know really what drugs mean. And so I feel like it depends on the age limit that they have for these students. So then that way, like I said, there's a developmental process that their brain can understand what we're teaching them, and then they can apply it to their lives. I think that would be a good start to decrease the outcome in disparities in education, especially for um, especially for populations, or for in population or certain population of communities, like African American communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, Native American, Indian communities, and stuff like that. Yeah, I feel like that would be a pretty good start. Yeah, I really agree on that. I understand that students have to have a certain level of, like, it's an age restriction. Well, not age restriction, but the developmental mind in their brains to interpret what is being presented to them, the information and stuff like that, and then also to drive it to your lives. I really agreed on that part. My next question that I have for you is, could you give an example of how education can alternate health outcomes? Yeah, I can give an example. I have many examples. My first example that I'll use is take sexual education. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about sexual education for young adolescent teens. It is now, well known that young adolescent teens are having sexual encounters before they turn 18. Um, and in most cases, many of these kids have, whether they've had sexual education through, health classes, or more commonly, it's through the parents. In health classes, they really depend on the parents to teach their kids about sexual education. But it's always that premise of some parents aren't really comfortable with having those kind of conversations. So, some teens might get it and some might not, which means it can go off on a tangent. And what I mean by that is some kids might not even get, they don't even know what safe really means. They don't really know the whole premise of contraceptives and stuff like that. So that in itself is an educational disparity, because some parents just, they don't want to necessarily teach their kids, or they think that their kids aren't doing it and stuff like that. Um, that's an example of the emphasis of internalization and externalization concept we discussed earlier. The level of disparity in this case to increase, and to say the least, the more there are regulated systems to educate the youth, then there's a certain avenues to take to avoid pregnancies. Because if these kids aren't having sexual education, we're gonna see a rise in teen pregnancies, and that's not really good, depending on the situation that you want for your life. Another example that I can put into it is the educational outcomes that it has for your livelihood. The higher your educational standards, the more opportunities you're going to have for getting better careers. Like for me, I finished college and I went into Department of Education, and I work for the Clark County School District. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, you have more opportunities for your careers, and then that gives you better outcomes for standards of living, like your income increases. And so that in itself, if you've got, you know, higher level of income, you've got more options when it comes to your health insurance, a lot of stuff like that. And so, yeah, I feel like out of those two, off the top of my head, that I can think of would be a big, premise for to reduce are just examples of alternating health outcomes by